All right, guys. Last time we were talking about civil liberties. Today we're going to be talking about civil rights. Let you guys read through this. Um, Civil Rights Act of 1875. This is where segregation gets its roots. It's outlawed in 1883, and then in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson. You guys remember that court case? It puts into play the idea of separate but equal. Then in the South, you start to see more Jim Crow laws come into play. These Jim Crow laws include an African American would have to pass a literacy test before they could vote. So it's one of those things where um, it's trying to limit the contact of African Americans and white people on a social, political, or even a religious level. So African Americans are not having a good time in the South. It's hard to find work, but they know there's jobs in other parts of the country, in the West and in the North. So this great migration takes place during World War One, and they spread out and they start to go to other parts of the country looking for jobs. White workers, they're going to resent the African Americans because this is new competition. It's harder to get a job then. Sometimes this competition leads to violence, and eventually will lead to also de facto segregation, where there's no law saying where an African American can live, but based on how much money they're making, you start to see black neighborhoods pop up in different regions of the country based on economics. July 26, 1948, President Truman signs Executive Order 9981. And it's the integration of the armed forces. So now African Americans are going to serve with the whites. Jackie Robinson is another example of integration. He breaks that color barrier during uh, Major League Baseball, um, and he is the first one to go ahead and play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He gets treated harshly while he's going on road games. Some teams don't want to play against him. Some players say bad things to him. Fans will throw food at him. So it's a really difficult time for him in the media, but it draws national attention to an African American playing in the Major League Baseball. Other challenging other people challenging segregation or other groups. The NAACP, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, they're going to fight to get equal rights. Thurgood Marshall is a famous lawyer and eventually a Supreme Court justice who's very successful fighting for African American rights. His biggest case is the Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, fighting to end segregation in schools to allow African Americans to go to school at a white school. This goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and uh, it's deemed that separate but equal is not okay. And within a year, over 500 school districts desegregate. It starts out slow, but eventually uh, they're all desegregated. Other people fighting for desegregation is Rosa Parks. She sits down on the bus and she refuses to give up her seat for a white man. This leads to a whole boycott of the buses down in Montgomery. She gets large support from the black community where they go try and bankrupt that bus company by using carpools, walking to work. They don't want to be. Uh, they want equal rights. Um, Martin Luther King, he's using nonviolent methods to really put his message forward. Civil disobedience, trying to get the idea out there that you can fight for these rights and do it nonviolently. One thing he really pushes for is sit-ins. There's sit-ins all across the country. Some are televised on TV, like in Greensboro at a diner. You guys can see they crowd in there and they sit in, and they don't want that business to get any business. They're doing it non-violently, getting their point across. There's also different freedom riders trying to protest. There is the Freedom Summer that goes along with that, trying to get as many African Americans to vote as they can. In the North, there's desegregation by law starts to take place. There are race riots. Um, it's very a time full of turmoil. Malcolm X is self-educated person. He says he's pushing for African Americans to fight and get their message across.